So Jonah.
Yeah, Jonah. He's got issues.
He's another unwilling, reluctant prophet, but he's kind of extreme. I mean, Moshe says, I don't want to go, but Moshe doesn't start running in the other direction.
Right.
Right? He literally runs in the other direction.
Or flies, because he's a dove, so he's like flying away. He's not built for this.
It's true.
How ironic is it that his name is, the only other place in Torah where Jonah comes up is in the book in Noah, where basically a similar kind of destruction story. Noah is also being told that people are going to be destroyed, and then they are. And then this Jonah shows up, this dove, that signals the end of destruction. Now Jonah is a prophet is that what it is? It's like he doesn't want to bring a destructive message, or it seems like he wants them to be destroyed.
He actually wants destruction. But what's interesting, I didn't realize this, is that there's another way this is like the story of Noah, which is that's another place where God regrets or repents. And there God repents from creating human beings. Mm-hmm. And here God repents from wanting to or planning to destroy the Ninevites, and then doesn't. But God takes it back.
Like almost like a tikkun. Like it's almost like in the story of Noah, there's a flood story where God is wrathful, as it were. The image of the divine is wrathful. And here, I would argue a more evolved sense of divine patience is, especially on this day. But Jonah is kind of like, maybe Jonah represents all of us that don't want to hear God wants to love us. A lot of us think that whatever we've done is so bad.
I think you're right. I think Jonah kind of seems to be mired in badness, in ra'ah, because that word is repeated again and again. And then the kayon kind of relieves the gourd, relieves Jonah of his badness for a few moments, right? God doesn't send the kikayon to give Jonah shade, because Jonah already has shade. He built a sukkah, but God sends a gourd, this sort of modest gourd, to relieve Jonah of his badness, of his sense of ultimate badness, and this badness that can't tolerate God's mercy and compassion.
Well, he has to learn that lesson in that way. And, is it the lesson that God shows him, relieving him of his badness, in that here you are, this petty little thing that bothers you, that you have, human beings desire, and then we get frustrated, we desire, and then we get frustrated, and you're desired and frustrated, and yet you're not allowing me, as it were, God says, to have rahmanas for 100,000 people, to have mercy. There's an obstacle to Jonah being able to get outside of his own, there's something in Jonah that just can't wake up, and he's sleeping everywhere. He's just sleeping.
He's sleeping, right?
He's either running away, or he's splitting off and going to sleep. That's it. He's just kind of tired,
He seems to like the order of reward and punishment. He doesn't want this messy world that God introduces with God's compassion and love. It makes things messy, because of course the Ninevites should be punished, right? That makes things even.
But maybe he shouldn't be a prophet then. Maybe that's what he was trying to do. Maybe instead of blaming Jonah for running away, we should blame God for running after Jonah.
Jonah's the wrong guy.
Yeah, Jonah's the wrong guy. Jonah's saying, listen, I'm not up for it, You got the wrong guy. I'm you want somebody who's up for love and compassion. I want, guns and fire and brimstone.
I want prisons.
I want prisons. Yeah. I want,
the Ninevites should be in prison, right?
Punish them.
Right.
Punish them. And God's the data doesn't support that. And Jonah's I don't care. I'm leaving, and don't follow me.
Well, God seems to be really invested in teaching Jonah a lesson. Actually, Rabbi Jill Hammer wrote an article about God as Jonah's therapist, so that when Avi was saying, oh, you sound upset, it was exactly, God is being Jonah's therapist. Reflecting back to Jonah who Jonah is. It's what do you mean you can't feel? What do you mean you can't feel compassion? Feel, Jonah, feel. And how many times is the word kum? I noticed this also when Avi was reading, wake up, get up, awaken, right? That word is repeated again and again. But Jonah wants to go to sleep. Jonah wants to die.
I mean, when we think about things this way on a scale of 100,000 people, and we think of social justice movements and so on, it's a very big question. I mean, it's a very big deal, but I think, for me personally, I think that reading this, in Buddhism, they have a lot of interrogation of different states of consciousness that we go into and emotions. So the other side of being afraid is aggression. They call it the right hand of fear is aggression. And there's the left hand is pretense, or like passive or passivity. So in fear, you're ready to fight, or you're ready to shut down. And often it'll come out when someone's aggressive. I read this, aggression can feel like a closed fist hitting you in the face, but passive aggression can feel like you got hit in the face with an open hand, and then on the back slap, it was a caress, and it confuses you. And I just remember feeling that there are so many ways in which resistance appears, and essentially the whole Jonah story is about like him not wanting to release into this God that is loving, this space of openness, right? He can't traverse. So he's going to run away, he's going to shut down, he's going to be angry, or he's going to be passive-aggressive, and he'll go and then really be upset, and God's going to say, are you upset? Right? Jonah doesn't say, like, I'm really upset. Jonah got to say, like, I'm just noticing, like, just the way that you've been slamming the refrigerator. Is there something wrong? You made your sukkah and you were, like, knocking it, And God's like, oh, how are you doing?
No, I'm not upset.
I'm not upset.
No.
I'm not upset at all. And like just letting go of anger sometimes is so hard because it becomes such a protective way that we communicate to the world that we've been frustrated or hurt or our desires were not met. It's
We're
like,
kind of dedicated to our own ra'ah, or our own sense of badness. I want to be stuck in that place.
Exactly. What else you got here, Rabbi Cohler Esses? You got some good stuff in here.
Well, it feels like Yom Kippur is that day to introduce to us this God that is El Rachum V'Chanun, right? That this God that is compassionate and gracious, and sort of introduces a womb of protection in which we can drop some of this bad or stuck or resistant consciousness.
So Jonah is kind of here at the end of the day, as if Jonah were here pleading with us and saying, I was angry, I wanted justice, and I met a God who is a God of justice, but a God, more importantly, of love, or a presence of love. And maybe what would it take for us to stop running? And what would it take for us to stop fighting? And what would it take for us to be able to name our fear before it becomes aggression or passive aggression? Like how we're here, the doors are closing. Like that, do you think that's the question?
I think it's an excellent question for this moment. And it's so interesting that Jonah drops the badness for a few minutes under this kikayon that God appoints for him specifically, which seems like the essence of love. Like, I see you, I see what you need, I'm going to create some protection just for you. And it's not just about shade, it's about relieving you from the harshness of your own consciousness. Kind of like an antidepressant, maybe? What would relieve us?
Is that the generic name? Kikayon is a generic name for...
Right. Prozac, Kikayon.
Wellbutrin, Kikayon. Wow. A lot to think about. I think...
Well, think about Yom Kippur as this sort of gift appointed by our ancestors, sort of to provide us with shade from the worst parts of ourselves, protection, that kind of gentleness.
It's beautiful, yeah. I think that's where we should end.
That's where we should end.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Excellent.
Yeah, mamash. Mamash, beautiful.